Davy Jones has been revealed to be a member of the D-Clan, and Rox D. Zebek is actually Davy D. Zebek and his descendant. The entire God Valley incident is just because of Shaki, and pretty much every player in the world was there, we now know. Shanks, Dragon, Zebek, Roger, Garling. The place is an absolute nightmare, but we also now know that Emu hated Davy Jones, and Garling wanted to use God Valley as the site of their hunting game to eradicate the Davy clan once and for all. And I guess also the Buccaneers with Kuma. But why? How? And what does this mean for characters like Teach, Shanks, even Luffy? Well, let's really get into it, because the secret seems to lie with Davy D. Jones, the greatest pirate in history. I personally am at the point where I feel like Davy D. Zebek is arguably one of the single most compelling characters Oda has written ever. I am absolutely locked in on what actually is about to go down at God Valley, because many of the thoughts that I've had, and I'm pretty sure you've had too, for years, are being overturned with every single page that this guy is doing stuff. Zebek, turns out, isn't a member of the Rox clan, and we just don't even know if there even is something like the Rox clan to begin with. But who knows, they might very well be real as well, and the biggest reveal is that his real important heritage is the Davy clan. In other words, descendants of Davy D. Jones from a very long agone era. Now, I feel like this opens up a ton of questions and a bunch of new answers, luckily too, and I think this might even warrant a straight up re-look into the entire D-Clan mystery as a whole, because the true secrets of God Valley aren't who's gonna save Shaki, how Roger was so ignorant to everything going on, seriously, he almost feels like the bad guy, or even what's going on with these crazy devil fruits here and what the others are. The most important thing is what is going on with the Davy clan. In fact, some questions popped right off the bat when I delved into the last chapter, 1158, one of which was, what the heck did Garling actually find on God Valley? He seemed beyond excited to show Emu something important, and well, we may have just gotten the main answer here. Because it feels very likely now that the biggest prize, at least according to Hunting Festival MC here, was the Davy clan itself. Zebek's whole family was on God Valley, hiding out for years, avoiding prosecution from the world governments. So while I still very much like the idea that maybe Uranus, or even better, the Straw Hat, or something else really big and fancy is also on God Valley because Davy Jones could still very much be Joy Boy, for instance, I think the biggest thing I can safely go off of for now is the fact that this clan is something Emu once dead and wanted dead for a long time, as Rox stated in 1158 that the world government probably wants his clan sent, well, to Davy Jones's locker. And that kind of tracks, considering that we saw Rox burst into the flower room up in Marijua to flex on Emu that he was a worshipper of Davy Jones back in chapter 1155, and there seems to be some real long-standing beef here. Also, you also feel like it's absolutely crazy looking at the chapter numbers and seeing how much crazy lore bombs Oda has been dropping in just about 4 chapters now. Like, can you imagine Dressrosa or Wano moving at this pace? I can't, but I am eating up all of it and really feasting every single week. Anyhow, Davy Jones. Whoever he really is, he's an absolute legend from the deep past, it feels. The thing that I keep struggling with the most, though, is when he might have actually been alive. Or, well, I guess, who knows, maybe is even still somehow alive somewhere too. So I think to really understand why Zebek and Teach being descendants of the Davy clan is game-changing, I think that you and I need to try and really pinpoint who Davy Jones actually is, was, or still might be in the future, question mark? Now, I gotta be real with you, the weird misinformation part of the theory community has been going absolutely wild with this chapter and spreading things as if they're facts, which just isn't correct, which we would never do on this channel. All right, you got me. I'm no stranger to using a title and acting confident on a specific idea. I do read my comment sections after all, but right now, a lot of misinformation has been spread as fact before the chapter ever released, and it's something I ought to clear up pretty quickly, I think, just for the context of this video. Because all that we actually get from this chapter about Davy Jones is that he was a pirate in the past, and that he was the namesake of the Davy backfights. Which does explain why Zebek used him to recruit his crew. It's somewhat of a family legacy, it seems. Some families force their kids to play baseball or football, meanwhile the Davy clan is all about pirate conquest games, so to each their own, I guess.
Manu, you'll never be a great basketball player. Just don't give up on your dreams now.
As for what we know about what happened to Davy Jones during Long Ring Long Land, my favorite arc, by the way, Nico Robin explained that Davy Jones supposedly, for unknown reasons, was cursed by the Sea Devil. Now he's supposed to reside on the seafloor even to this day. Now, because of this, the seafloor is of course also known as Davy Jones's locker, and Davy Jones is considered to lay claim to everything and anything that sinks into the sea, since this is his domain. I guess that includes a lot of the ancient kingdom, the Going Merry, and probably Bartolomeo and Kit also. Good for Davy Jones if he wants them. I guess Luffy doesn't need them. And then lastly, for official information, in SBS Volume 38, you know, the extra material that Oda releases with each volume, in this case Volume 38, we got a visual for the original Davy Jones. This is what he looks like. Soak it in, everyone. This is the ancestor of Teach and Zebek, and apparently one of the most cursed and powerful and legendary pirates to ever do it. And like, low-key, Oda kinda cooked on the little details of giving him all the missing teeth, since that could have been a sniper shot of foreshadowing for this very reveal, connecting him to Teach and, you know, his missing grills. But also, like, he's just a sloppy pirate, so maybe that's why he's got the missing teeth. You know, scurvy will do that to you, I guess. But I do like to think that Oda wanted to subtly hint at his family lineage here, and this actually makes me want to go, like, through all the other SBS we have gotten so far again, because there's just so much hidden information that Oda just tosses out in those, or characters like Tritoma and Davy have straight up designs revealed in them, and then suddenly, poof, they're now appearing and insanely relevant in the story. So yeah, that's what we actually know about Davy Jones. Now, nothing in this chapter confirms that Teach, Zebek, and Davy are all in the same body. That's an idea that still is on the table very much, but I think some people tried to make it seem like this chapter straight up confirmed it. But nope, not yet at the very least, I think. I love that theory and definitely believe that Teach has some weird triple personality thing potentially going on, but it's very much yet to be locked down. Now, with that said, what can we actually infer about Davy Jones, and how do all of these reveals give us a picture of when he lived and why Imu hates him so much? In fact, Imu and all the Celestial Dragons, apparently. Well, I mean, the biggest thing we now know is that Davy was a member of the D clan, which actually can deconfirm an idea a lot of us theorists tossed around, that the D stood for Davy Jones, and well, that's kind of cool. I mean, I like it when Oda somehow actually does confirm something, even if that confirmation is not this thing, and I can still rock with it. It's kind of cool. Now, at this point, we also know that he has been tied to both Hachinosu and God Valley, since Zebek's homeland is the island of God Valley officially. We speculated that last week, so happy that turned out to be true. But we also got confirmation that the Davy backfight started on Hachinosu, presumably very long before Zebek was ever doing them, since he was able to use them to recruit his crew before he took over the island. I kind of wonder which one is actually the original home of Davy Jones and which one he just sort of settled on, I guess. I actually tossed these ideas out in a recent theory where I talked about Roxy Zebek being Davy's descendant, and I'm pretty glad to see that we have apparently nailed the idea. But hey, that's what happens when you pump out a ton of theories. One of them at some point is bound to actually ring true. Now, based on this, the logical conclusion I've come to is that, in some way, Davy D. Jones was revered as a godlike figure. The island being called God Valley, the way that Zebek describes himself as a worshipper of Davy Jones to Imu as if it's a cult, and now Zebek saying that the only way that their clan managed to live was by hiding in the underworld. I don't know, makes a lot of sense to me, which, by the way, raises a whole different question too. What did Zebek mean by the underworld? Because, in case you didn't realize, in One Piece, there are at this point different underworlds that get talked about. We have the underworld in Elbaf, an actual location, the criminal underworld, you know, as a concept, and then the literal plane of hell that Brook and seemingly Imu both draw their powers from. Now, I feel like we can pretty confidently say that the Davy clan didn't survive in the Elbaf underworld, since Zebek had never met or even known about Harold, the king of the island, when they met. Technically, the jury's still out on that, but I personally doubt that possibility the most. Now, I really hope that Zebek quite literally meant like the demons and devils types of underworld, because That would be crazy hype if that's a real place. Honestly, some insane theory potential with that one, especially with Emu's demon powers and the idea that Emu calls them devils, and Davy Jones seemingly sharing some odd ties to the Sea Devil when it comes to his lore, and we still have a lot of unexplained characters with horns and the Oni race and stuff like that. I don't know, maybe, just maybe, Emu is actually just harnessing Davy Jones's power from the Underworld or the Abyss, and that's why they want the clan dead. You know, so that no one gets the very bad idea to try and free their dark devilish god from Emu's shackle. Could be really fun, could work, and I personally really hope that in a very crazy weird twist, this is the actual direction Oda goes with this, but there's also a lot of stuff in chapter 1159 that kind of makes me think that Xebec is just straight up talking about the One Piece criminal underworld instead. In this chapter, we see that Don Marlon has died, a member of the underworld, and then Big News Morgans is revealed to have been president of the newspaper, another organization affiliated with the underworld too. By the way, Morgans himself is actually a super interesting part of this chapter, specifically all by himself, because he was relaying information to Hachinosu, you know, on purpose. This kind of makes me think that in a crazy turn of events, Xebec and Morgans might have actually been good buddies, and if that's the underworld that Xebec was talking about, that would make sense. It could explain why Morgans was leaking information to Hachinosu specifically, since Morgans straight up might have known the Davy clan was there and that Xebec was actually, you know, part of them. And I'd actually love this to be the case because I've always wanted Morgans to be tied to a major pirate crew in some way, shape, or form. A theory I put out I think 3 or 4 years ago at this point was that Big News Big Bird here was part of Roger's crew, but I kind of feel like that theory is dead with 1159. But instead, I think it paved the way for this new Rocksteady-Xebec connection, and I really thank you for that, Oda. However, I will also admit it's just as likely that Morgans was revealing this information to screw the world government over and chose to leak it to Hachinosu because of Shaki being the one kidnapped, since she was an important part of the pirate island at this point. But honestly, regardless of which underworld Davy D. Jones is actually tied to, it feels really likely to me that he's some type of godlike figure. For example, we've talked about the idea of him maybe being the sea god from the Second World, Joy Boy's era, and I do still really kind of like that idea, and it feels even more likely now that this chapter confirms Emu wanted his descendants wiped off the map. If that is the case though, the D-Clan has some even more serious explaining to do, because if Davy D. Jones is the sea god, well then he can't be Joy Boy and the sun god, and considering the lore and name drops that Robin made back in Long Ring Longland, my god, I don't like this arc anyways, and like all this new information that we've now gotten from Rocks, I kind of, or Davy I guess, or Xebec, I feel like it's growing less and less likely that Davy and Joy Boy are actually the same person at this point, again, even though I think this would be cool. But to me, it kind of seems like Davy's lore is so heavily tied to the ocean, claiming the souls and items lost to its waves, which doesn't particularly sound like Joy Boy at all. And then there's also the entire he's said to still be alive thing, which could definitely be a legend, but we've got to give Robin some credit too, because she normally doesn't drop fake news. And so I really have to give some credence to the idea that Davy might still be alive. And in that case, he definitely couldn't be Joy Boy, since Joy Boy used the Nika fruit, and well, Luffy currently has that one, so that doesn't really pan out at all. And so in this scenario, I actually think there are 2 ways this could work the best. If Davy D. Jones is the sea god, he may have been the rival or contemporary of Joy Boy, who then ended up fighting alongside him against Emu during their own cataclysmic final war of the Second World. And Emu may have then sealed him away and is now using his mighty sea god powers against everyone else right now. I want to remind you that Davy Jones's locker is a real-world pirate phrase used to actively describe the abyss of the ocean. Abyss as in Emu's powers? A little bit suspicious at least. Makes me kind of think that Xebec's great-grandpappy Davy might be imprisoned by Emu after all, again something we've speculated on this channel about before. The other option though is that Davy D. Jones is cursed to roam the seas, kind kinda similar to Zunisha. Could he be protecting a road poneglyph as the man marked by flames maybe? But I do want to start with the first idea that Davy, my boy here, is the sea god. And this idea really stems from the real lore of Davy Jones that Oda has woven into the entire show, that being the stuff that Robin talked about here in chapter 306, and I think it's actually quite funny, to be honest. Like, the idea that a sea god could have been cursed by the devil to roam the sea floor, a little bit ironic. It also kind of makes you wonder how he'd manage to breathe and survive, unless he's like a fisherman or something like that, or there is some actual, Davy Jones Pirates of the Caribbean stuff going on. Who knows, Oda could have very much used that as inspiration too, but kind of would be sick, honestly, if Davy was a fisherman. Anyways, I do think the way that Zebek actually talks about Davy is something that even adds to the idea that he may have been one of the 4 gods of One Piece that we get to know about in the Mural and Harley text from 1138, and also, of course, back in Skypiea. Zebek worships this dude, and his descendants having lived on God Valley makes me kind of think that he probably has some ties to the idea of the 4 gods. Also, seeing as One Piece is all about inherited will, what if the actual truth is that the Davy clan were Joy Boy's rivals, but not his true enemies? You get what I'm saying? Like, it would explain why Zebek generally seems to not be an evil guy. He is brutal and cutthroat for sure, but he really hasn't done anything truly evil in my opinion so far. If anything, he's been getting more good and not more and more evil as time has passed. So instead, I'd actually argue that he's just kind of a brutal, cutthroat pirate, presumably like Davy Jones was too, but doing so in order to defeat Emu, who persecuted and murdered his clan. Because really, everything else we've seen so far, he seems to really care about his family and his crew, and does kind of like respect the ambitions of everyone around him. And honestly, the same thing can be said straight up about Roger during this time, according to the legends, where they said that he'd become absolute demon-like when people messed with his friends. In a weird way, it just almost seems like Luffy's current generation is a little bit more friendly overall compared to Zebek and Rogers, who kind of let their fists do all the talking. To me, he's almost got big Sasuke or Madara vibes going on, which is kind of awesome. Actually, something I've talked about and I've seen a lot of people be very worried about is the idea that the story might go in the direction of the Great Ninja War from Naruto, right? With all the different generations paralleling Idra and Ashura in Naruto. But honestly, that's kind of fine with me. Inherited will has always been a massive core concept of the story of One Piece from the very beginning, and I think we're just now finally getting to see how the island picture is painted. Davy could have rivaled Joy Boy the way that Zebek then rivaled Roger, and that Blackbeard now rivals Luffy. Or maybe Davy and Joy Boy didn't fully click and it caused some problems when they tried to work together to defeat Emu. I'd actually bet that the same thing is where God Valley is going, as in I think that Zebek and Roger's hatred of each other be what ended up causing Zebek to lose his family, his life, etc. at the hands of the world government, simply because he and Roger couldn't connect. So maybe Luffy's just gonna eventually have to man up and put aside his differences with Blackbeard in order for the two of them to defeat Emu, and then maybe, who knows, they fight afterwards. I've also seen some people speculate maybe like Davy being the rival of Nika, but I just don't really think that actually works out timeline-wise, only because specifically his full name is Davy D. Jones, and I personally think that the D-Clan may actually not be the descendants or people tied to Joy Boy, but they might actually be the people who followed in the footsteps of Nika. Who knows, Joy Boy himself might have been a D, and that means that the D might still stand for dawn or dusk after all. But I also actually still think the idea floating around that Nika is actually the moon god makes a lot of sense based on the Harley. We've talked about this before, but just to summarize really quickly for you, Nika's got way more connections with the moon than he ever has with the sun. Really think about it. Gear 5 looks like the Sulong form, which only comes out at full moon. Luffy jumps and dances in front of the moon during his awakening, and the Harley text frames the sun god in Japanese in quotation marks as if the sun god is not actually his real title. And so I actually think that Nika's role as a leader of the D-Clan makes the most sense based on Davy and presumably Joy Boy both being D-Clan members too. This would explain that line in the second world of the Harley where it talks about the people of the half moon in the third world with the voice of the half moon, sounding a lot like the D-Clan who were descendants of the moon god Nika, and, having nothing to do with the sun, if you ask me at least. So who knows? Maybe it really is some Naruto type stuff going on here where Joy Boy and Davy Jones just are rival members of the D-Clan, just like Roger and Zebek and Luffy and Teach are, and they might need to kind of come together. They will meet again to take down the, outside threat that is Imu in this case. And as I just said, it might just straight up be that the two members of the D-Clan are the two people who will never meet again at the end of the Harley. In the second world, it was Joy Boy and Davy since they were defeated by Imu, but maybe the two D-Clan members who wield the darkness and sun god fruits need to team up to become the whole moon again and defeat the void god evil monster thing, whatever Imu is, right? You get the idea. That would, of course, in a massive twist of fate, be Luffy and Teach teaming up at the end of the story, and I would actually, in a weird way, kind of like seeing it now that we're seeing Teach's origins and finally getting some sympathy points for him too. He's obviously always been the antithesis of Luffy, but his father was like totally giving off pretty crazy Luffy energy if we're being real. It kind of seems like Teach and Luffy may have some deeper similarities that Oda still has to explore. And if you'll allow me, I actually want to cook a little bit more with that thought, because it might even explain why Zebek refused to work with Roger to begin with. The biggest hole to this theory I can think of is why would Zebek not just buddy up with Roger if all of this were the case, but there might be another member of the D-Clan Zebek thought was supposed to be Joy Boy to his Davy, not Roger, but what if Harold was who Zebek thought was the right person? Think about it. It would make so much sense that all this is coming up during the Harold flashback that we're still in. Yes, he was in this chapter in case you forgot. If Zebek actually just thought the sun god of his era was gonna be Harold. To me, it sounds like he wanted Harold to have the Nika fruit based on Zebek's speech in chapter 1156. Not to mention, it seems like the Nika fruit was probably the thing stolen from Aura's castle in chapter 1152. Not confirmed, but it seems very likely. Shanks seems to be very worried that Harold was gonna die and that something was gonna cause that very soon. So maybe it was Imu's plan to steal the Nika fruit and kill Harold that Shanks was trying to get ahead of. In case you missed it, in chapter 1152, Shanks specifically says that the reason he was on Elbaf when Harold died was to talk to Harold about something he couldn't when they originally met up in Marijua. Now, ultimately, I kind of think it feels really likely that Zebek's true goal was to have Harold, his one true friend, eat the Nika fruit and team up with him to defeat Imu. The way that Davy Jones and Joy Boy probably should have during their era, but that didn't work out, and so it's up to the next generation, his son Teach, to finish what he and his ancestor Davy Jones started. That would line up very well with the final line of the third world in the Harley, where it says, they will surely meet again. Luffy's bound to bring the new dawn, of course, we know that, so maybe in a huge twist of fate, Blackbeard is the one who will actually help Luffy do it? Alright, so that would be a really fun but also kind of sick way for Oda to take things in, but there's also still the idea that Davy, as Robin said, might just straight up be alive and a character relevant to the story. But also, maybe that whole seafloor comment wasn't exactly the most accurate, right? Davy D. Jones may have been an ally of Joy Boy who was punished by the devil Imu to roam the seas, carrying one of the 4 poneglyphs around the same way that Big Z does right here. I think this could make a ton of sense when you really put his mythos into the story properly. After all, they do say that the man marked by flames is sinking ships with insane whirlpools and sails on an all-black ship, and Kid and Blackbeard are fairly confident he's the one who has the 4th road poneglyph. And I think this sort of ominous sea ghost type legend that exists very well matches up with the real tale of Davy Jones from real pirate lore. And while I have to admit that 1159 has also made me consider that Dragon might just be the man marked by flames, Davy Jones is pretty much my only other choice at this point. It would make a ton of sense if he has these deep ties to Joy Boy and Imu that he could be the man marked by flames if you actually consider who it is that he would be fighting. Either the sun god or Imu using the eternal flame would be the perfect person to inflict a massive burn mark or brand of some kind on a person like Davy Jones. Plus, if we go with the idea that Davy was a rival of Joy Boy's turn ally, it would also explain why Imu would curse him to roam the seas, since Imu seems to be very oddly into torturing and erasing anyone associated with Joy Boy. And if I were Joy Boy, I think giving my rival one of the poneglyphs to protect until my successor showed up would be a pretty smart idea. I mean, the dude's bound to be insanely powerful if we use Rox and Joy Boy as any benchmark here, and I also think it could open up an incredibly heartfelt or serious moment if Oda decides to show us how Roger was able to get access to a poneglyph guarded by Davy Jones, considering that Roger is currently assumed to have defeated Rox on God Valley, at least as of right now. Honestly, I'm not entirely certain that's what actually will happen at this raid. We'll probably find out soon enough, but if it is how Sengoku described it when he introduced God Valley first as a concept, then Roger did end up defeating Rox. So if Roger then had to face off with Davy himself to get the poneglyph, well, damn, wouldn't that be a very awkward conversation to have, right? I would love to see that play out, honestly, but okay. Now, I don't want to just straight up write off the very popular idea that Joy Boy is Davy Jones. After all, we talked about this too. And to me, also, there still very much is a world where Davy D. Jones could have been Joy Boy himself. And all that rivalry stuff I was talking about is actually just about the Abyss characters and the Sun Gods. Emu and Joy Boy, Luffy and maybe Teach, if he consumes Emu, and Nika and the Earth God in the first world. I actually think it would be very cool for Oda to kind of frame Teach and Zebek as the people who were supposed to be the ones who inherited the will of Davy Jones, but then Roger and Luffy were the people who actually did. Kind of a fun scenario too, not gonna lie. Seeing as inherited will isn't tied to family members specifically, it is more tied to willpower, that also works. And this would even explain why Whitebeard's words to Teach at Marineford seem to sting him so much and have so much emphasis put on them. Teach maybe thought that he would be the next Joy Boy, the next Davy Jones, but Whitebeard knew the truth from Roger. Luffy was the next person to follow in Davy's footsteps, not the actual descendant of the Davy clan. And it totally would tie in very well with the possible reveal that Shanks might just straight up be a member of the Davy clan too, seeing, as him and Shamrock were born to a woman from God Valley. If there were multiple Davy clan members there, which it kind of sounds there were, like a whole group of them, maybe Garling's baby mama was also a Davy member, and Shanks is the child of destiny alongside his brother Shamrock because, well, they are half Celestial Dragon, half D-Clan. And this might even give some credence to the theory that Luffy's mom is a Celestial Dragon too, because if people thought that Shanks was the GOAT because he's an Arnold Parma of goated genes, then maybe Luffy is also that, and that's why he was able to inherit Joy Boy's will. It could still work and line up with Teach and Luffy eventually joining forces. Though I will say I'm slowly starting to lose some faith in that idea the more that we've learned about Davy Jones, but there still is very much hope. And speaking of hope, I truly hope that you consider joining the Ohara Patreon because it's a real fun time over there and you'll gain access to some sick early release content and even some exclusive perks like artwork, podcast premium episodes, and the free One Piece newsletter I produce. If you don't have money to support or don't want to support but still want to get something for free and hang out, it's called the Opinion Piece. Now, with that little plug out of the way, what really matters is what all this means for the baby of the hour, Shanks. I'm just playing. Shanks deserves his own full video this week, so that'll come out on Tuesday. Go check that out. I want to lock in on Luffy's big bad boss, Blackbeard. Davy D. Teach, I guess? A lot of people have been quick to call out the connections between Teach's Jolly Roger and the fact that we now officially have 3 people from his lineage. Teach, Zebek, and Jones. The 3 heads of the Davy clan, so to say. That was fun. But honestly, I haven't been convinced by that one too much because as God Valley develops, if we end up seeing Zebek's body hop into Teach like we've talked about in the past, well then I'll be hella convinced obviously, but right now I still think that those 3 skulls might actually just still not have their true meaning revealed yet. Regardless though, I am definitely more than curious if Blackbeard will be the one to actually fulfill his father's promise to Emu. I mean, Zebek proudly told Emu that he would be back, so I kind of wonder if he actually does make it out of God Valley and is tied to Teach in some way, shape, or form, or if Teach will simply be the one to actually do it for his dad. I actually kind of love it if we cut back out of this flashback and it's revealed that Teach is currently the one raiding Marijoa, and it cuts back to show us him in the Room of Flowers flexing on Emu a little bit. That would be a fairly epic moment after this flashback. All I know is that Davy Jones's will, whatever it is, has lived on in Zebek, and Zebek's will seem to now very much live on with his son Teach. Now, whether that's the wrath of the sea god or a misinterpreted version of Joy Boy's will, I still haven't fully cracked. Hopefully we'll get more hints on that, but it does make you wonder what Zebek actually knew from Jones and how that influenced the fruits that he wanted and all the Galela stuff that Zebek was talking about too. And even more so, I'm curious, does Teach know about this stuff? I mean, he's always been on some next level planning, obviously, so I do wonder if he did something somehow to absorb the 2 devil fruits his father was after too, and if he'll end up freeing the Galela giants, or if he's just, you know, going to figure out a way around whatever his daddy thought they'd be useful for instead. In case you're wondering, my guess is that purpose was building Pluton, but hey, who needs to do that when Blackbeard has the actual means to drop the walls of Wano and take Pluton for himself now? He knows where it is. Or, better yet, what if the Yami Yami no Mi actually has some insane dark god powers that rival Nika? Maybe, just maybe, Blackbeard will go defeat Imu and awaken his true god powers, becoming the dark abyssal god he was always meant to be. Davy de-teach the Master of Darkness, or he might grab Pluton, and in that case, Luffy will just build his own right here in Elbaf, which I think might happen. If you want to know why, check out this video right here. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. Thanks to all of our insanely cool Patreons. We have a bunch of new people on board. Really appreciate it. You guys really help us out. And otherwise, I will see you on Tuesday for the big Shanks video as well. And then on Thursday for a big God Valley breakdown. I'll see you then.